We're continuing tonight with our world religions and cults. And when we do this, it's really broken up into different sections that include the history, and then we get into the beliefs and compare them with look at what the Scripture says as opposed to what the beliefs of the particular religion says. And tonight we're still in the history of Islam, so we're not into their doctrine yet. So we're going to just cover a little bit of the history. And the reason for this series is to help us to learn what other people are, their belief systems, and it helps us in conversation with them, and that as the Lord gives us opportunity to be a witness, we can talk to people more on the level that they are, as far as coming from, if we have, let's see, Proverbs talks about knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. And when you have knowledge, you can understand, and then understanding brings wisdom. And as we have a knowledge of people around us, and we understand more where they're coming from, then it gives us wisdom as to how best to relate to them, and our desire is also to be a witness to them and win them to Christ. But Islam is the one we started here in the last couple of weeks. And Islam hugely influential and common religion all around the world. Over 1 billion people claim Islam as their religion. And let me just tell you, whether we like it or not, as far as here in the United States, and it's not just Islam, it's other religions as well, the United States is becoming less and less predominantly a professing Christian country. And as a matter of fact, New York City just got approval. I think the governor signed something, but anyway, they got approval that they're adding a new holiday to their school calendar. Now think about New York City. New York City, you go there, you go to one part of New York City, feel like you're in one country, go to another part of New York City, feel like you're in another country. The world has come to New York City. But it's not just New York City, it's many other places as well. And New York City, though, they have now a holiday, and I forget what the name of the holiday is, that is a Hindu holiday. And apparently they have 800,000 Hindus in New York City, I guess, or something like that. I mean, a huge amount of Hindus in New York City. So there's enough in their school systems that they now, so I mean, they have a holiday for, all kinds of things, religious observances now in New York City. So where it used to be predominantly the holidays were Christian, or maybe you'd have some Jewish ones observed, but now you have a lot more Muslims in places, and Hindus, and so all kinds, and that's the reality of the country we live in. It's more predominant, and it's been more predominant for years in some of the bigger cities, but it's just becoming more and more that way, and I expect it as we go along, it's just going to continue that way. So we can't stick our heads in the sand and just look at the way the world was, or I should say the way America was 50 years ago. We have to look at the way America is today, and learning about other religions, and this helps also if someone's called to go to a foreign field and maybe have some some more knowledge and understanding of other religions. It can be helpful so you can better relate to people. So we've started with Islam, and we looked at being founded by Muhammad, and he supposedly had an encounter with the angel Gabriel that was quite intense and left him shaken, and his wife affirmed that this was an authentic message from Allah. And so that is what caused him to be monotheist as opposed to polytheist, because there where he was in the area what's modern day Saudi Arabia was predominantly at the time a pagan polytheistic culture, and they the merchants and the traders worshiped multiple gods. And so this was a big change for Muhammad, was that he believed that there was one God, and they call him Allah. And they also then they faced opposition, because Muhammad faced opposition, particularly after his wife and uncle passed away, and so he then ended up fleeing to Mecca, and it was in Mecca where he ended up setting up shop and becoming more influential. And it was the very early on, Islam became very political. That's not a new thing. that was early on, right away. Islam became very political, and so that continues on today. So they went he left Mecca and he went to Medina, and that was the place where they could freely exercise their beliefs. And so he gained political power there. So that's where we left off last week, as they faced that opposition. And we're going to pick up here with the centuries of conquest, because the history of Islam is one of conquest. It is one of gaining political power and territory, and very much forcing people to follow their way, that they were in any area that they conquered. And Mecca became the focal point of Islam as Muhammad consolidated power and conquered the Arabian Peninsula for Islam. And fighting for their faith was a big part of Muhammad's life and emphasis. The second chapter of Quran, verse 2:16, it says, there's various translations of the Quran, but it pretty much, all the versions of this that I looked at pretty much say the same thing. It says, "Fighting is prescribed for you, and ye dislike it. But it is possible that ye dislike a thing which is good for you, and that ye love a thing which is bad for you, but Allah knoweth, and ye know not." That was the English translation by Yusuf Ali, which historically has been one of the more common ones. There's been some other Quran translations that have gained in predominance. Muhammad, the Al-Hilawi, and the Khan translation says, "Jihad is ordained for you, though you dislike it. And it may be that you dislike a thing which is good for you, and that you like a thing which is bad for you. Allah knows, but you do not know." And so those are just two of the translations of that into English. And nearly 1,400 years of history was filled with Muslim conquest of various lands. There were numerous battles between the Muslims and the people who were called Christians, which included Roman Catholics and the Eastern Orthodox. And they conquered a lot of territory over 1,000 years and up to 1,400 years. And some of these examples are Syria in 634, Persia in 642, Afghanistan in 670, Egypt in 639, North Africa in 700, Spain in 711, Turkestan in 715, Morocco in 722, and West Africa in the late 900s. And they even sacked Rome in 846, even though they didn't actually conquer Rome. And one of the most significant events and gains by the Muslims was the conquest of Constantinople, which was accomplished by the Ottomans in 1453. And so the Turks ruled much of the civilized world for 450 years, and even expanded into Europe toward the border of Poland and into Hungary. And so here is a map that I retrieved from Encyclopedia Britannica, and this shows the comparison of the Byzantine Empire at different times. So that red line that goes around was the extent of the empire under Justinian I, from 527 to 565, as when he was ruling or lived. And the empire, the lighter shade of red, was the empire in about 1020, and then the empire in about 1360 is the darker red. And so you can see that, they say the more pronounced red, I should say. And so you can see it shrunk over the years. And as the Muslims then expanded, and the Byzantine Empire shrunk over the years, and that would then, the culmination of which would be the conquest of Constantinople. And this is another image here. This is the expansion of the Ottoman Empire. And I don't know if you can see in the middle there's a brown, and that is the Ottoman Turks in 1300. The orange then goes out from there from 1300 to 1359. The more cream colored or tannish cream colored 1359 to 1451. and then the purple, 1451 to 81 by Mehmed II, and then the lighter green, 1512 to 20 by Selim I, and then the more tannish brownish, 1520 to 66, and then the darker green from 1566 to 1683, and that gives us the boundary of the Ottoman Empire at its greatest extent from 1683 to 1699. And so Constantinople, right there in the middle, where the modern-day Istanbul, Turkey. And so very much a lot of history there. And even though, you say, well, what's the big deal about learning about Islam? We're Christians, we believe the Bible. I mean, I'll be honest with you, from just simply a historical standpoint, it is a fascinating history to learn, to read about it and see what went on in that part of the world. And so those are some maps that give you the imagery of that and that part of the world. And then I did the obligatory citing of it at the bottom. That's what all that small print is. And then, so as they did centuries of conquest, I'm going to read a portion here from Encyclopedia Britannica on this. And the fall of Constantinople took place on May 29th, 1453. It was the conquest of Constantinople by Sultan Mehmed II of the Ottoman Empire. The dwindling Byzantine Empire came to an end when the Ottomans breached Constantinople's ancient land wall after besieging the city for 55 days. Mehmed surrounded Constantinople from land and sea while employing cannon to maintain a constant barrage of the city's formidable walls. The fall of the city removed what was once a powerful defense for Christian Europe against Muslim invasion, allowing for uninterrupted Ottoman expansion into Eastern Europe. By the mid-15th century, constant struggles for dominance with its Balkan neighbors and Roman Catholic rivals had diminished Byzantine imperial holdings to Constantinople and the land immediately west of it. Furthermore, with Constantinople having suffered through several devastating sieges, the city's population had dropped from roughly 400,000 in the 12th century to between 40 and 50,000 by the 1450s. Vast open fields constituted much of the land within the walls. Byzantine relations with the rest of Europe had soured over the last several centuries as well. The schism of 1054 and the 13th century Latin occupation of Constantinople entrenched a mutual hatred between the Orthodox Byzantines and Roman Catholic Europe. And nevertheless, just as deeply entrenched was the understanding that Byzantine control of Constantinople was a necessary bastion against Muslim control of land and sea in the Eastern Mediterranean. In contrast to the Byzantines, the Ottoman Turks had extended their control over virtually all of the Balkans and most of Anatolia, having conquered several Byzantine cities west of Constantinople in the latter half of the 14th century. Constantinople itself became an Ottoman vassal during this period. Hungary was the primary European threat to the Ottomans on land, and Venice and Genoa controlled much of the Aegean and Black Seas. Sultan Murad II laid siege to Constantinople in 1422, but he was forced to lift it in order to suppress a rebellion elsewhere in the empire. In 1444, he lost an important battle to a Christian alliance in the Balkans and abdicated the throne to his son, Mehmed II. However, he returned to power 2 years later after defeating the Christians and remained Sultan until his death in 1451. Now, Sultan for the second time, Mehmed II intended to complete his father's mission and conquer Constantinople for the Ottomans. In 1452, he reached peace treaties with Hungary and Venice. He also began the construction of the Bogaz Kazin, I'm not saying that right, I'm sure, later called Ramel Hisari, a fortress at the narrowest point of the Bosporus in order to restrict passage between the Black and Mediterranean seas. Mehmed then tasked the Hungarian gunsmith Urban with both arming Ramel Hisari and building cannon powerful enough to bring down the walls of Constantinople. In that portion, it goes into more of the details about the battle, and I'm not here to delve too deeply into the history of everything, but just to give you an idea of what took place at that time. And that was really a culmination of the Muslim conquest. And so for then centuries after that, they enjoyed quite a bit of power and influence around the civilized world. And what would happen, which is where we'll pick up next time, is there would then be a shift and some things would change, a turning of the tide later on, of some hundreds of years later. And we're not going to cover that tonight. But the history of Islam is one of conquest. It is one of building the political power. It's one of spreading out as far as they could. And so understanding the history, or knowing the history, helps us have a better understanding of why things are the way they are today in certain parts of the world. And so we'll fill in some of the blanks, the gaps next week, and then we'll try to transition. I'll do my best to transition then into some of their core beliefs, or what their authorities are for their beliefs, and we'll make our shift toward that, as that's what we really want to focus on. But it's helpful to have that foundational history of Islam, and then we can then make that shift into what they believe and how that ties in with their history regarding, the fact is, we've seen this for what we've covered so far with the Roman Catholics and the Eastern Orthodox, and I'll emphasize it again. You see it especially with Islam. Separation of church and state, separation of the government and religion is a huge thing when you look at the history of the world. And I will say, one of the things that people say the most, that say intellectual people, professors, or people, the students will come out of college saying this, and they'll say, more wars were fought in the name of religion, than any other reason. And so they'll use that. Some people use that as a reason to then just reject religion, as if just all religion is about war and conquest and all of that. And for some religions, that is true. And even what is called Christianity, understand that when you look at the Roman, when you look at Rome, you look at both Eastern, Western Roman Empire, they didn't believe in separation of church and state, and so they would believe in conquering other areas, and Rome did that quite a bit. But what we can see also, it's not as a common part of history, is that those who just simply believed the Bible, they weren't trying to get tied in with politics, trying to take over countries or governments. They believed the Bible, they wanted to practice their beliefs. They were not people that were waging wars in the name of religion. So true Bible-believing Christianity is not part of just constantly going out and having wars. Now, we believe in defending ourselves, we believe in being patriotic and loving our country, but it's not a matter of taking over the United States for Christ, or then expanding around the world, conquering for Christ, turning it into a Christian nation. But that is a large part of the history in the world, and so we need to recognize just the importance of that, and that no matter what the religion is, the separation of church and state, what it's meant to do is not get rid of all mentions of God. It's not meant to get rid of all, that somehow you can't pray at a football game or at a city hall, as a city council meeting or something. But what it was meant to do was to keep prevent there from being a state-backed or state-mandated religion, and so it kept that protective barrier there between religions and the government. So of course, the opposite's been taken too far by people today, and they try to just stamp God and the Bible out of society. But it is still an important principle that we should believe and live by, and respect that. Because what we see in Islam, certainly not a separation of religion and state, and other religions are also the same way. And we should show that there is something different. There is a better way, and what I think the model that we have in America as we come up on July 4th just next week. It's hard to believe the year's half over in a couple of days. But with July 4th and our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution, that's what makes America so special, was the unique influence by Bible-believing Christians on the makeup of this country, the development of this country, and the specific freedoms that were granted just had a profound effect, not just on this land, but also even a model for the world. It can be an influence on the world, and my concern is that America be a good influence on the world as we go forward. Many times that is not the case, unfortunately. We're not as good of an influence on the world as we once were. But the model that was all the way back at that time, the founding of our country, is one that we should be thankful for, and just thank God for it, and try it the best we can to preserve that in our own hearts, our own lives, and then to promote that to others as well, of the good things of it. You know, so many people are bashing America and trashing the history of the United States and talking about all the bad things and the terrible things that happened that USA has done in our past, and people have done here in this country. And while there still certainly are dark parts of our history, America itself still has been a beacon of light and a bright place, and we can be thankful for it here as we come up on Independence Day, July 4th. I mean, it's hard to even think next Tuesday, the next Wednesday we're here, July 4th will be passed. So I'll say it now, but we can thank the Lord. But we're going to continue on with Islam next week, and Lord willing, and continue with the history, and then we'll try to get more into the beliefs of Islam as we go forward.